Good afternoon and welcome back to number 17 in our Read Through the Bible series. We're in Genesis chapter 30. You remember Jacob has married has now got two wives, sisters, Leah and Rachel. And Leah has borne 4 boys and Rachel was barren, unfortunately. Chapter 30. When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister. She said to Jacob, "Give me children, or I shall die." Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" Then she said, "Here is my servant Bilhah. Go in to her, so that she may give birth on my behalf, that even I may have children through her." So she gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife. Jacob now has 3 wives, or 2 wives and a concubine. And Jacob went into her, and Bilhah conceived, and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, "God has judged me, and has also heard my voice, and given me a son." Therefore she called his name Dan. Dan sounds like the Hebrew for judged. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again, and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, "With mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister, and have prevailed." So she called his name Naphtali. And of course, in the Hebrew, Naphtali sounds like the word for wrestling. When Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. So Jacob now has 4 wives, or if you like, 2 official and 2 concubines. Then Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son. And Leah said, "Good fortune has come." So she called his name Gad. Now that could also mean a troop is coming. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. And Leah said, "Happy am I, for women have called me happy." So she called his name Asher. And of course all of these names mean what the woman, the mothers, feel at that time. In the days of the wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field. Remember, Reuben is the firstborn of Leah, the firstborn of all Jacob's sons. And he brought these mandrakes to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Is it a small matter that you've taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also?" You can see the rivalry that's happening between Rachel and Leah here. Rachel said, "Then he may lie with you tonight in exchange for your son's mandrakes." When Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, "You must come in to me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." I wonder how Jacob felt about his wives moving about like a chess piece. So he lay with her that night, and God listened to Leah, and she conceived, and bore Jacob a 5th son. Leah said, "God has given me my wages, because I gave my servant to my husband." So she called his name Issachar. Issachar sounds like the Hebrew, of course, for wages, or for hire. Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a 6th son. Then Leah said, "God has endowed me with a good endowment. Now my husband will honour me, because I have borne him 6 sons." So she called his name Zebulun. Zebulun, of course, sounds like the Hebrew for honour. Afterwards she bore a daughter, and called her name Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel, and God listened to her, and opened her womb, and she conceived and bore a son, and said, "God has taken away my reproach." And she called his name Joseph, saying, "May the Lord add to me another son." Joseph means, "May he add." As soon as Rachel had borne Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away, that I may go to my own home and country. Give me my wives and my children, for whom I have served you, that I may go, for you know the service that I have given you." But Laban said to him, "If I have found favour in your sight, I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you." And that's true. Laban was doing very, very well because God's blessing was upon Jacob. But remember these two crafty men. We'll see what happens here. "Name your wages," says Laban to Jacob, "and I will give it." Jacob said to him, "You yourself know how I have served you, and how your livestock has fared with me. For you had little before I came, and it has increased abundantly. And the Lord has blessed you wherever I turned. But now when shall I provide for my own household also?" So he said, "What shall I give you?" Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this for me, I will again pasture your flock and keep it. Let me pass through all of your flock today, removing from it every speckled and spotted sheep, and every black lamb, and the spotted and speckled among the goats, and they shall be my wages. So my honesty will answer for me later, when you come to look into my wages with you. Everyone that is not speckled or spotted among the goats and black among the lambs, if found with me, shall be counted stolen." Laban said, "Good, let it be as you've said." But that day Laban removed the male goats that were striped and spotted, and all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had white on it, and every lamb that was black, and put them in charge of his sons. And he set a distance of 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob pastured the rest of Laban's flock. Then Jacob took fresh sticks of poplar and almond and plane trees and peeled white streaks in them, exposing the white of the sticks. He set the sticks that he had peeled in front of the flocks in the troughs, that is, in the watering places where the flocks came to drink. And since they bred when they came to drink, the flocks bred in front of the sticks. And so the flocks brought forth striped, speckled, and spotted. And Jacob separated the lambs and set the faces of the flocks toward the striped, and all the black in the flock of Laban. He put his own droves apart and did not put them with Laban's flock. Whenever the stronger of the flock were breeding, Jacob would lay the sticks in the troughs before the eyes of the flock, that they might breed among the sticks. But for the feebler of the flock he would not lay them there, so the feebler would be Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man increased greatly, and had large flocks, female servants and male servants, camels and donkeys. Jacob, by his own cunning, made sure that the stronger became his and the weaker became Laban's. You see how the men are dealing with each other. Laban, through trickery, had Jacob marry Leah instead of Rachel, whom he desired first, and so he had 7 years extra labour from Jacob for his other daughter. But now Jacob is using his cunning to get back at Laban. Chapter 31. Now Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, "Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what was our father's he has gained all his wealth." And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favour, as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, "Return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you." So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and said to them, "I see that your father does not regard me with favour, as he did before. But the God of my father has been with me. You know that I've served your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, 'The spotted shall be your wages,' then all the flock bore spotted. If he said, 'The striped shall be your wages,' then all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. In the breeding season of the flock I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, 'Jacob,' and I said, 'Here I am.' And he said, 'Lift up your eyes and see. All the goats that mate with the flock are striped, spotted and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel.'" Remember, that's the name that Jacob gave to the place where he had the dream. house of God, Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise, go out from this land and return to the land of your kindred." God calls Jacob to mind about the vow that he made at Bethel. Jacob made the vow that if God brought him safely again back to his home, that God would be his God. It was, if God did this, then he shall be my God. That was the vow that Jacob made at Bethel. God is reminding him of that. "Now arise, go out from this land and return to the land of your kindred." Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, "Is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us." Indeed he did. "And he has indeed devoured our money. All the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do." So his wives are agreed with Jacob that it's time to move. Now remember, 7 years Jacob served and Leah was given as his wife. A week later, Rachel became his wife, and he had to serve another 7 years for her. It's 6 years later now, so he's been with Laban for 20 years. We're at verse 17. "So Jacob arose and set his sons and his wives on camels. He drove away all his livestock, all his property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods, teraphim. And Jacob tricked Laban and the Aramean by not telling him that he intended to flee. In fact, later on Laban says, "It was foolish of you to sneak away. Why didn't you stay? We could have had a feast." But these guys, Laban, Rebekah, Laban's sister, Jacob, Rebekah's daughter, Rebekah's son, they're so used to not trusting people that Jacob sneaks away. He shouldn't have done that, but nonetheless, he does so. He didn't tell his father-in-law that he intended to flee. He fled with all he had, and arose and crossed the Euphrates, and set his face toward the hill country of Gilead. When it was told Laban on the 3rd day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsman with him, and pursued him for 7 days, and followed close after him into the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night, and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." And Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban and his kinsmen pitched tents in the hill country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done that you have tricked me, and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and trick me, and did not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre? And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? Now you have done foolishly." And he's right in saying that. "It is in my power to do you harm, but the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad.' And now you've gone away because you long greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods?" It's the household gods, the teraphim. Jacob answered and said to Laban, "Because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. Anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what I have that is yours and take it." Now Jacob didn't know that Rachel had stolen them. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the tent of the 2 female servants, but did not find them. And he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods, and put them in the camel's saddle, and sat on them. Laban felt all about the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, Let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me." So he searched and did not find the household gods. Then Jacob became angry and berated Laban. Jacob said to Laban, "What is my offence? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? For you have felt through all my goods. What have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I've been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried. I've not eaten the rams of your flocks. What was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. From my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was. By day the heat consumed me, and the cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I've been in your house. I served you 14 years for your 2 daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you've changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac, had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty-handed. God saw my affliction and the labour of my hands, and rebuked you last night." Then Laban answered and said to Jacob, "The daughters are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks. All that you see is mine. But what can I do this day for these my daughters, or for their children whom they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me." So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, "Gather stones." So they took stones and made a heap. And they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha, and that's Aramaic for heap of witness. Jegar Sahadutha. But Jacob called it Galeed. Galeed is Hebrew for heap of witness. Same word, different languages. Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me today." Therefore he named it Galeed. And Mizpah, Mizpah means watch post. For he said, "The Lord watch between you and me when we are out of one another's sight. If you oppress my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no one is with us, see, God is witness between you and me." So Laban's saying, you're not to mistreat my daughters, nor are you to take other wives, apart from these daughters of mine. Then Laban said to Jacob, "See this heap and the pillar which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, this pillar is a witness, that I will not pass over this heap to you, and you will not pass over this heap and this pillar to me to do harm." That doesn't mean they can't see each other in friendship, but certainly not to do harm. "The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us." So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac, and Jacob offered a sacrifice in the hill country and called his kinsmen to eat bread. They ate bread and spent the night in the hill country. Early in the morning Laban arose and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned home. That's something we can also learn as parents, to bless our children, to tell them their strengths, and to tell them what we see in them, that God is developing in them, and that God might, at some stage, use to glorify himself. Our children need to know that they have the blessing of their parents. Well, let's move on to Matthew. Now remember, in Matthew chapter 16, the last verse, he said, "Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Well, chapter 17 speaks a little of that. What they see is something perhaps that looks forward to Jesus when he's coming again. says here in chapter 17, after 6 days, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. So it's just the 3 disciples, not the 12. And he was transfigured, changed, before them. And his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Elijah, talking with him. And Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah. He was still speaking when, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And a voice from the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. Often, when Peter found himself in a situation that was new to him, or something came that he didn't understand, or perhaps he was a little anxious, or fear came upon him, Peter would talk. So he said, Lord, I can make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Not that Moses and Elijah or Jesus, any of them needed tents, but Peter was thinking, oh, it's good, let's stay here. But God says, no, this is my beloved Son, whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell on their faces and were terrified. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, Rise, and have no fear. And when they lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus only. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, Tell no one the vision until the Son of Man is raised from the dead. And the disciples asked him, Why do the scribes say that Elijah must come? You see, if you read Malachi, the last chapter of the last book in the Old Testament, it talks about Elijah preparing the way for the coming Messiah. He answered, Elijah does come, and he will restore all things. But I tell you that Elijah has already come, and they did not recognize him, but did to him whatever they pleased. So also the Son of Man will certainly suffer at their hands. Then the disciples understood that he was speaking to them of John the Baptist. John the Baptist came in the spirit and power of Elijah, you see. And when they came to the crowd, a man came up to him, and kneeling before him said, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic, and he suffers terribly. For often he falls into the fire, and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, and they could not heal him. And Jesus answered, O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him here to me. So the 9 disciples that were left down below, when this epileptic boy was brought to them, they were powerless. And yet, Jesus had sent them earlier 2 by 2, and given them power to cast out demons, to heal the sick, and even to raise the dead. But this one they couldn't cast out. This one they couldn't cure. And Jesus berates them for their lack of faith. O faithless and twisted generation, how long am I to be with you? How long am I to bear with you? Bring him here to me. And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the boy was healed instantly. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, Why could we not cast it out? He said to them, Because of your little faith. For truly I say to you, if you have faith like a grain of mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, Move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. But this kind, and this is verse 21. Some translations leave this verse out. This kind never comes out except by prayer and fasting. However, the main thing was your lack of faith. As they were gathering in Galilee, Jesus said to them, The Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him, and he will be raised on the 3rd day. And they were greatly distressed. When they came to Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma tax went up to Peter and said, "Does your teacher not pay the tax?" He said, "Yes." And when he came into the house, Jesus spoke to him first, saying, "What do you think, Simon? From whom do kings of the earth take toll or tax? From their sons or from others?" And when he said, "From others," Jesus said to him, "Then the sons are free. However, not to give offence to them, go to the sea and cast a hook and take the first fish that comes up, and when you open its mouth, you will find a shekel," which is more than enough for the 2 of them. "Take that and give it to them, for me and for yourself." That's Matthew 17. Let's turn back to the book of Proverbs. We're reading in Proverbs chapter 4, and we're reading from verse 19 through to the end of the chapter. "The way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know over what they stumble. My son, be attentive to my words. Incline your ear to my sayings. Let them not escape from your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them, and healing to all their flesh. Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life." That verse, keep or guard your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. We have to be very, very careful what we allow to settle in our heart. What we allow in. Because if we allow in wisdom, insight, God's word, if we allow in what Jesus says and do what he asks us to do, then our hearts are the way that God wants them to be. But if we allow into our hearts the lusts of the flesh, the lusts of the eyes, the pride of life, then out of our heart will come all that Jesus said. It's what comes out of the mouth and that comes from the heart that defiles a man, and a woman, of course. So he says, guard your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life. Life can flow out of our innermost being. Death can flow from that too. And usually through what we say and what we do. Put away from you crooked speech, and put devious talk far from you. Let your eyes look directly forward, and your gaze be straight before you. Ponder the path of your feet, then all your ways will be sure. Do not swerve to the right or to the left. Turn your foot away from evil. You see, remember chapter 3, verse 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. God wants that for us. Do not swerve to the right or the left, and turn your foot away from evil. Keep on the straight path. Well, thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you hopefully next time.